Well, no, because the thing that you do, dude, that you've always done is like you act like a cocky prick, like as like kind of like a character that you're playing, like you're joking around. But if you don't know you, like when you do it to me now, like I laugh and like we make jokes or whatever, but like I didn't fucking know you, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Like fuck him, like it was like I didn't know it was a bit, but once I learned that, it's a different story.
Welcome, everyone. This was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, if you want to help out the podcast by making a donation, you can go to thiswasthescene.com/donate. There's a way to Venmo me. You can also send PayPal, and all that helps to keep this thing going. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/thiswasthescene. You can go sign up there for $1 a month. Or I think now it's a subscription where it's like $12. I don't know. They did something weird, but you can go check that out if you'd like to. Arcade Academy was a band that I started after my band Lanemeyer. We were like a pop punk emo kind of thing. I don't know. You can go check it out on Bandcamp. I'll put a link to the songs in the show notes. For many people who've been listening for years, I was in this band called Lanemeyer. That's how I got in the punk scene. And then when that broke up, I moved away from New Jersey to LA for a little bit, moved back to New Jersey. And in that time, I had started this project in San Diego when I was living there. I started that with about 3 guys. I had some songs I'd written after Lanemeyer, and then I was like, I really want to do something with this. So I started in San Diego, moved back to Jersey, and then I kept the band going with new members. And Sean Bergin is one of the people that I started the band with in New Jersey. So this is just the history of this band. I did episodes way back in the beginning with my buddy Chris and Sean and David Tino. Who else did I do one with? I think it was just the 3 of us talking about Lanemeyer. I also did one with Jeff DiMaselli talking about Conquers a Cow, which was the band before Lanemeyer. So I wanted to document the history of this band, even though it's mine, so maybe it seems kind of lame. But if you want to understand a little bit about me and why I basically started this podcast like 15 years later, is because this is where I got annoyed with the scene, and then I just waited for almost 2 decades to do a podcast, which didn't exist back then. So this whole episode is going to be me and Sean just shooting the shit, but there's all these stories that just kind of came up and I totally forgot about. So there's a lot of things that we kind of got wrong, and like the order of the guitar players I did mix up a little bit, but whatever, no one's gonna fucking care. And it's just a really fun conversation because Sean's one of my favorite people on the entire planet, and it's just us catching up and talking about this time, and it's really fun, and I had a blast. So hopefully you enjoy it, because a few weeks ago I reached out to Sean and I was like, do you want to talk about this? And he's like, hell yeah, let's do it. So I got him on the Skype, and this is what we chat about: meeting, joining, and getting kicked out of Day at the Fair, how we met each other at the Scape Engine House, my first clothing line, Destory Clothing, September Sky, the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Ryan, Metal Matt, dressing up as Great White right after the club fire, the infamous Sean Bergin Dance video, the inspiration for the album North Beverwyck, which is on Bandcamp. It's 5 acoustic songs about a breakup I had, which we talk about in the interview, and a ton more. You can listen to all the songs on Bandcamp. I don't have it on Spotify because I'm not going to pay the monthly fee for having 2 downloads a month for this fucking music. But if you want to go check it out, it's arcadeacademyrock.bandcamp.com. Again, there's a link in the show notes. One last fun fact: the opening song to this podcast and the closing song are from a song that I wrote called Diner Parking Lots, which I wrote for Arcade Academy. I recorded that with Casey Lee Morgan, who did the drums, and I did all the other stuff. But yeah, so if you've been wondering what that song is, that's mine, and I did that because I didn't want the podcast to eventually get taken down for any kind of copyright playing music. So I was like, well, let me put my own up there. So yeah, so you've been wondering for this long what that is. That's it. This song actually isn't on Bandcamp, but it's on the NJPP archive, so I'll put a link to that. And there's 5 songs on there, 3 of which were songs from my first demo that I recorded with Casey Lee Morgan. And then the other 2 songs are on there, which we recorded with Ryan Selleck at his studio many moons ago. So if you want to check it out, go click on the links and let me know if you like the songs. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I was like, how do I do this where it's literally both of our story, but I mean, I guess I did with like the Lanemeyer episodes as well, where we were kind of just talking about the history. So it's basically me, the 2 of us, just talking about the history of the band.
I would say like, I was thinking about it too, and there are different mile markers, but I mean, it really is kind of your story. I'm kind of the passenger, which I was going to reiterate in the interview, but I mean, there's so many funny things that happened, and I do remember very clearly, like, you giving me the demo for the first 3 songs, like Diner Parking Lots, so far no good, etc. And then me like propositioning you to be in the band.
Let's not do that yet. We'll work up to that. Yeah, I'm like thinking of that. I'm thinking of that party we were at in Pennsylvania where I fell down and like scratched my back. It was bleeding profusely. Do you remember that?
September Sky.
September Sky. That's the fucking band name. All right, I was gonna talk about those guys too.
But we met at Escape Engine Dom's house. That's how we first became friends.
Right. So I'm gonna lead into that. But first, as I do with everybody, I'm just gonna give you the stage for a second. How'd you get involved in the scene? And then from there, we'll talk about how the band formed and everything.
The scene, believe it or not, I was very late to the scene. I was not aware that there was a New Jersey pop punk scene happening. I lived in South Jersey. I was going to Rowan, and I was going to more national shows, like Weezer, Oasis, Archers of Loaf, that type of thing. And my brother Kevin started telling me about these shows he was going to at Wayne Firehouse and things like that. My mental impression was, oh, this is like high school battle of the band shit,
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't know it was an actual viable scene. And then he started giving me some CDs to listen to, one of which was Lanemeyer, If There's a Will, Midtown, Save the World, and like Saves the Day, Through Being Cool were like the three that stuck out the most. And I was blown away. I was like, wait, these guys are from Jersey? Like, they're little kids. Like, how the hell are they making music like this? It was mind blowing. And then obviously he started telling me about shows like that of bands I was familiar with, that there was a crossover like Alkaline Trio or Jimmy Eat World. I knew them, and they're playing Wayne Firehouse and like these local shows with you guys. And I was like, holy crap, this is legitimate. Like, these are legitimately amazing musicians and songwriters. So that's how I kind of fell backwards into it. It was all my brother.
What year was that?
So I moved to Texas for a job in 2000, and it was right before that. So it was like 99, 2000. I remember the three records I listened to the entire way down to Texas was Midtown, Lanemeyer, If There's a Will, and I think maybe I'll Catch Fire by Alkaline Trio on repeat. Like every time I stopped at a rest stop to get gas or like a big gulp, it was switching the CDs out of the CD player as I kept skipping along through that entire journey. But yeah, those are the three I listened to the most. That's how I became a Lanemeyer fan, like a huge Lanemeyer fan, just from listening to it like on repeat, nonstop.
So did you ever go to any before we started playing? And well, I want to talk about Day at the Fair too. Did you actually go to any local shows? Like, because but before you went, did you go to any local shows?
No, like I said, the bands I went to, there might have been local bands playing. Like I went to a lot of Stone Pony shows, and like my stomping grounds were like the TLA and the Troc in Philly, like the Khyber, and then some local places in Jersey, like Birch Hill was a huge one, Chrome, Tradewinds, which is real old school down in Seabright. So there was some bars like that, and it was like local-ish bands, but not from the New Jersey pop punk scene. One that really stuck out in my mind was from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. They were called Solution AD, and the guitar player from Live, he recorded their album for them. Like they were friends with Chad Taylor. So I became a huge fan of theirs, and they were local-ish, but they had a national presence. They were on MTV and some stuff like that. So it was really cool, like seeing that kind of organic growth, but I just wasn't plugged into the Jersey side of it. I was like everywhere else but.
So when you move back from Texas, this is where you really get involved in it, right? Because you were only in Texas for what? It was like 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah, and then that was for like a sales position or some shit like that, or?
Yeah, so I was working in a retail store in Nutley, selling refurbished computers, it was just basically buying garbage and just paying for it. You're like, hey, I just want to buy this pile of garbage components and just let's just see if it works. But they had a corporate sales division in Dallas, and I didn't graduate college. I was like, well, I don't know the career trajectory for a retail sales guy selling refurbished computers. So they had a corporate sales position they offered me, but it was in Dallas. So I had to kind of make that leap, which was nerve wracking and horrible because Texas is the worst. Did it anyway, just to kind of boost my resume. And after 2 years, I hate Texas so much, like with the fire of a thousand suns. I didn't like the job. I didn't like my boss. So I was like, I'm going to go back. And so I moved back to Jersey. But the interesting kind of my segue into the scene was actually why I lived in Texas. I was religious about looking up bands and their websites, and there was a website that you could look up like every tour that was going on. I forget the name of the site, but it was like bookmarked. I went on there every day just to see what bands were coming through. Believe it or not, Dallas had like a great music scene. Like Deep Ellum, that section of Dallas downtown is great. Tons of great bars, great musician, like any kind of music you want, they have going on. I was going to a ton of shows even by myself and just kind of learning the scene down there. At one random time, I looked up Lanemeyer. I went up to your website, and it said that you guys broke up. Chris was doing this new thing called Day at the Fair. He had his email address on there. So I just emailed him, and I was like, hey, man, my name's Sean. I live in Dallas. I got an apartment. If you guys are ever on tour, need a place to crash in Dallas, like hit me up. I'm from Jersey, that whole nine. He replied back, and he was really cool. He's like, oh, thanks, man. He's like, what I could really use is I'm trying to book a tour, and I don't know any venues down there. So I put together like this fucking dossier of like every venue in downtown Dallas where like I'd been. It was like, here's the capacity, here's the bands that are played there. This is kind of like the ticket prices. This is the crowd. Like, I mean, it was a detailed, like I said, dossier. So he was super appreciative. He emailed me back. He sent me a copy, which I still have somewhere. I got to find it, but he sent me a copy of like an unmixed demo version of No Lights on Weldon. So we kind of corresponded a little bit there. Then we lost touch, and I didn't know that he had moved back to Jersey. I moved back in 2002. And a year later is when you guys reunited at like I think a Knights of Columbus or something
Oh
in the
yeah,
Planic.
that like benefit show.
Yes, yeah, it was benefit for Chris's boss's kid.
Yeah, Ashley put that on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You guys played that, and I went, and I remember like I was like, I wonder if Chris would remember. I doubt he'll remember me. I mean, it was a long time ago. I emailed him, so my brother knew you guys, like he knew who you were, and he was a fan for so long. And he pointed Chris out like the bar, and I went up to him and I was like, hey man, I don't know if you remember me. My name, I lived in Texas. I sent you an email. He's like, are you Sean? At the time, I'd never really been around musicians, especially bands I loved. So I was like I was so excited. I was just like over the moon because like I had like a stature of you guys. Like your stature was way higher in my mind than it was in your minds. Like you guys were just, yeah, we're like a pop punk band from Jersey, like Lanemeyer. I'm like, no, you're like Lanemeyer, man. Like you're like legends. Jersey emo legends. So he was very nonchalant, very cool, and we were just kind of chatting, and like he's like, oh yeah, he's like, we're playing next week as Day at the Fair if you want to come back. And I was like, fuck yeah. He's like, let me give you my number. I was like, oh my God, Chris Barker's giving me his number. And it was wild, right? Yeah. So next week I go back, I see Day at the Fair. And I'm talking to Chris again at the bar. We're just chatting. He's like, we're talking about life at this point. Like, oh, when did you move back from Texas? I'm like, when did you move back from California? We're talking that shit. And he's like, so what are you doing for work now? And I'm like, well, I got laid off in the summer. So I was like painting houses at the time and like delivering pizzas. He's like, well, we're going on tour in February. You should come with us and like be like the roadie merch guy, guitar tech. And I was like, sweet, sweet drunk talk. I was like, yeah, man, sure. I'd love to do that. Completely not thinking that's a real thing. Like, this is not a legitimate offer. The guy's drinking, like, he's just being super nice. Like, I don't know him. He doesn't know me, more importantly. I don't know the rest of the band. But no, he was dead fucking serious. Like, he was just like, yeah, like, come with us. It's a 2-week tour down to Florida and then up through Illinois and we're back to the East. He invites me on the bus, like after the show, like their little shuttle bus that they had, and they're loading out. And this is just the most fucking appropriate. Like, this is the most Rob Heiner response ever. So Rob is playing bass and singing. He walks on the bus, and I'm like, and Chris is like, oh yeah, this is Sean, man. He's gonna come on tour with us in 2 weeks. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, Rob's gonna veto this real quick. And Rob's like, oh cool, nice to meet you, man. And he just goes back to loading in, or loading out rather. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, maybe it's something wrong with me. I'm like, there's no way this is a legitimate thing. Like, this is insane. Like, what if I'm a serial killer? Like, you don't know who the fuck I am. And I'm like, am I like losing my mind? Like, how is that the appropriate response? That like, you don't know me. I'm gonna go on tour and live with you guys for 2 weeks. And Rob was just like, yeah, cool. Then Steve came on the bus, and Steve Weir was the drummer at the time. He had the absolute appropriate response because Chris was like, hey, Steve, this is Sean. He's gonna come on tour with us in 2 weeks. And Steve was like, what? Fuck are you? What the fuck are you talking? Like, lost his mind. He's like, what do you? No, we're not fucking bringing this guy. I don't know this fucking guy. And I was like, that is absolutely the appropriate. That is the correct way to respond to that situation. I ended up winning Steve over on the tour because I was talking to a girl all night and he thought she was really cute. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want you to meet my friend Steve. And then I kind of backed out and let him hook up with her. And he was like, I was sold for life with him. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of the whole thing. It was very nonchalant. It was very like casual. And I just kind of figured as we get closer to tour happening, like Chris is going to be like, oh, hey, man, I was just, we got somebody else or one of our friends is going to come or whatever, maybe next time. And no, that didn't happen. He was like, yeah, we're leaving this date, like be at my house this time. And that was it.
And you just sold, so it was like 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks. We went out with Clark Street. We went down, started out in like Delaware. Love those guys. And we went down to like West Virginia, all the way down south through South Carolina, Florida. I believe we stayed, it might have been Jay Vix that we stayed with in Florida if he was living there at the time. I think it was. I was another friend of theirs. I'm not sure. It was like,
I thought he was in Wilmington because he was living there when Day at the Fair toured through there. And there was this upstairs club in downtown Wilmington. Were you on that? Was that the tour you were on?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't believe that was the one. Maybe it wasn't Jay. Maybe I'm getting mixed up because I didn't know anybody at the time. So I was just kind of meeting all these people on the fly. But we stayed with somebody in Fort Lauderdale, then went down to Miami. And it was just a wonderful time. Like, I mean, it was just being, this is a band I was a huge fan of. And to just be like adjacent and be on tour and like hanging out and like drinking beers and, selling merch and doing whatever. It was just like, I was like, that was the epitome. That was the peak of what I imagined like, being attached to a band or being a fan of a band would be. Like I never dreamed to be beyond that. So for me, it was just such a thrill. And like I got to know the Clark Street guys, like absolutely loved them. Like I met so many cool people on that tour. It was just everywhere we went, people were great. So many great experiences, so many towns I never would have been to or states I would never have been to. So it was unbelievable. Like it just absolutely life-changing experience for me.
I love that you just did that because you sent an email to Chris when you were in Dallas. Like that's just I always love these stories that I hear. All these stories I hear through the podcast because it's just someone just does some little thing and then years later, decades later, whatever, their life is just went in this different direction. I mean, obviously it didn't sustain for like 20 years of being in a band, but like that next fucking 5 years, 4 years or some shit around like of you just being involved in like the scene and touring and playing in bands, like it's crazy.
It's not. It's like that metaphor of like you throw a pebble into a pond and the ripples just go out for like miles, and it's just really that is exactly what happened. It's on a whim, just sending an email and be like, hey man, if you have a place to crash, like let me know. That led to everything else, and it's just really credit all to them because like the fact that they were just so willing to be like, yeah man, sight unseen, we're just gonna take you on tour with us. Like we don't know shit about you. You could be like whatever. I mean, like I could just been a raging dick the whole time. Like I could have been super high maintenance. I mean, there's so many personality conflicts that exist with people, and
Yeah.
to take that leap of faith and be like, no, I feel like you're a good guy from those 2 emails we exchanged.
I mean, honestly, man, like your vibe when if anyone everyone listening, Sean's one of the funniest, greatest people I've ever met. And like
Aw.
when you first meet you, when anyone first meets you, it's like you can tell they're like, all right, this guy is not threatening. And it is such a Chris move too, because Chris is very just like, oh yeah, let's just do this, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, there's like a very like there's a sense to me of like again, I had this like very warped sense of like not to take away from you guys or anything, but the Lanemeyer to me was like you guys are on the same level as any other band that like existed at the time. And it wasn't until later that I found out that you guys weren't as big as I thought. Right. Like I was like, well, clearly this like listening to If There's a Will, I'm like, this band is on the same level as like, I don't know, like any national band I was listening to at the time. They're equal to everybody. So for me, it was like, oh, they were only. I mean, I know you guys toured nationally, but it was like, well, you're a little bit more regional than like a national global band. But to me, I'd never thought of you that way. Like I thought of you guys as like massive, and it was just funny to me because like too, I remember when that show when you guys played that I'll tell you this. I remember that reunion show when you guys played
That was so
in
bad.
2003. I remember I saw you for the because my brother pointed you out too. He's like, "Oh, that's Mike Doyle, like the bass player, singer." And I was like, "That's Mike Doyle." And the reason was I thought you were like in my mind. I had you because I only seen the pictures from like the If There's a Will album that like kind of like animation looking. It's like I don't know, they had the weird exposure.
Yeah, it was this weird filter on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was cool. Like I love the artwork in that album. But I remember like you looked like in my mind you were like Dr. Dan from Lifetime, like this jacked up huge dude, like a ripped like. And when I saw you, I was like, oh, he's not like this fucking monster. Like he's just a regular guy.
Yeah, because I think that photo I'm not wearing a shirt when I'm playing or something. But like
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely did not look like jacked like Dan like at all.
No, but like I didn't. It's like I looked at it too quickly, and I just immediately associated it with like because every picture of Dan from Lifetime is like him like shirtless, like screaming. I was like, oh, that's the same guy, essentially. So funny. So reality crashed up against expectation, and I was like, oh, yeah, he's not like that at all.
I didn't know you were at that show.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't talk to you because I thought you seemed kind of like a cocky dick. So I was like, yeah, let's skip that guy. But yeah, but anyway, I had this whole like kind of stature impression of you guys. So when Chris invited me on tour and I got to be a part of it, me, a nobody that's never played in a band, that's never been on a stage playing, like I never had that privilege. So it's like, what business do I have doing this? What business do I have to be involved in a band of your level, of like your talent, to even just be like the merch guy? Like I just didn't feel like I was worthy of that, So like to give an opportunity, like I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. It exploded my brain.
When did they invite you to be in the band?
So I think that was just from like being on tour, and like I was kind of like, from what I've learned over the years, like bands are very non-confrontational. Like to hit the fair, I get kicked out of the band without being told I was getting kicked out of the band. And not to knock them or anything, it was just kind of like I just kind of found out before they were ready to tell me. But like I'll get to that if you want me to. But it was like they're non-confrontational. So like there were times when we were on tour where Chris didn't want to ask the guy, or nobody wanted to ask like the promoter for the money. And I was like, I'll go fucking do it. So I was very like almost like the business manager. I was willing to take on that role, be like the bad guy. Like I don't give a shit. You said you were going to give us like $100. Like give us the fucking money. I think because of that, because like Chris is like such a like a nice and wonderful guy, but he's so enthusiastic, I think, about new people when he meets them. If he was like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" or like, "What advice would you give me?" Like not advice like musical advice, like how do I write a song, obviously, but like he was like, well, thinking about doing a tour. Like, what do you think we should do? Should we do a national tour? Should we do? And I was like, well, I think you guys should really celebrate the New Jersey side of it. There's a big scene here. Like, you guys should really play a lot more locally and then branch out. He's like, that's a great idea. And it was like stuff like that. Like, he was very willing to kind of like take my advice, not advice, but like suggestions, or he valued my input. I'll put it that way. Once that kind of like that personality meshing and like we got along, we were laughing the whole tour. It was just a wonderful time. Like so much funny shit happened. I think they were like, well, we could be in a band with this guy. Like he would fit in personality wise, not ever talent wise, but for sure personality wise. So they had mentioned that they wanted to like, thicken the sound a little bit, add a guitar player. So I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do that. And because I played guitar for a few years, not great, but like I could play like at least rhythm guitar. And then they asked me to be in the band, so I assumed guitar. Agree. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm gonna start learning the guitar parts. And Rob's like, no, I want to play guitar. So you're just gonna learn how to play bass. And I was like, I'm sorry, what now? And like I literally had never even held a bass. The closest I'd ever been in proximity to a bass was I went and saw Weezer to Stone Pony in like '94, and I was so close to the stage, I was right up against it that Matt Sharp kept moving, and like I had to keep dodging the neck of his bass because he would almost hit me in the face like 20 different times. So that was the closest I'd ever been to a bass guitar. Rob shows up in my house. He's like, here's the bass, here's your cabinet. See ya. And I was like, great. Okay. And then, yeah, so it was a little bit of a learning curve there.
So how long was it before you got kicked out? Like, wasn't it the first tour or something like that?
Yeah, we played some shows like locally, like here and there, which again, it was so cool because like I got to play like JC Dobbs in Philly, which is like where Pearl Jam and Nirvana played. I got to play like cool venues I really wanted to play like locally. So that was awesome. Where I started seeing the divergence was when Chris really wanted to go on like a national tour, and so we booked it. But I was like very not like completely against it. I mean, the idea of going on tour seemed like amazing, but I was like, I don't know if we're really like some of these shows aren't that great. Like we were only a handful of guarantees, and it was like it's gonna be a lot of money, and and I'm very kind of like cheap when it comes to stuff like that. Like let's not spend money if we can make money here. But I think they were just kind of like looking to get on the road and kind of do stuff. So I was like, yeah, fuck it, man. Like I'd love to do that. So we did. First tour was like in February 2004, and I think they asked me to join like when we got back. So it was like a month later. We started practicing, went to a few rehearsals or whatever, played a couple shows locally, and we went on tour, I believe, in like July, I want to say. I think it was. We got back and it was like it was pretty icy. I was pretty iced out towards the end of that tour. It wasn't them, it was also me. Like it was 100% like very shared blame to go around.
What was like the wedge going on? What was the divide?
Number one, I think so like when I mentioned before, when like Chris would kind of value my input when I wasn't in the band and I was just a fucking roadie. When I started kind of try to give suggestions or input when I was in the band, the response was, whatever, new guy. I was just like, wait a minute, you didn't give a like I was nobody before, and you were like, that's really good insight. Like that's really insightful and really good idea. And so I kind of understood that there was like a hazing type of element, like not overtly and not like they're not like paddling me or anything like that, but it was like there is kind of like, hey, you're the new guy, you got to kind of know your place. And I was already older than everybody. I'm like at the time like 27 or something. So it's like I've worked in like corporate America. Like I'm not really kind of built for that kind of hazing thing. Like maybe when I was 19, it would have been easier. Like don't be stupid. My ideas are valid. Like don't be a fucking asshole. And I think that kind of led to it. Fundamentally, I wasn't a good bass player. So it's like I had no business playing bass in like a band again of that level that was on the cusp of being signed, that was writing all these amazing songs. I remember we were like on tour and Chris was like, oh, I got this new song. It's called like Who You Gonna Believe Me or Your Lying Eyes. We're practicing it during sound checks and stuff. And I'm like, this is fucking amazing. Like this song is incredible. And it was like, I'm like here, I'm witnessing history. And it was like, again, that's maybe a little hyperbolic, but it was just so cool just to be around that and watch that process happen. I was under no illusion that I was like a good bass player or anything like that. So it was definitely hard to like kind of keep up the pace. I think also to blame who's myself is that given an opportunity like that, I should have fucking immediately like gone to take bass lessons. I should have like really worked at being good at it. To be honest, I wasn't very passionate about bass. Like it never really like kind of spoke to me as like an instrument or anything. I don't listen to bass parts when I'm listening to music. I just don't really care unless it really stands out. Everybody else, I don't give a shit. So it was a little bit hard to kind of put my passion for music and being in a band with like, but you have to play bass. So I fully take the blame. Like I was not a good bass player. I should have really kind of ran with it and like learned and like worked a lot harder at it and took it like a job, which I didn't. I took it more like a hobby. I just wanted to be cool. I get this opportunity, so I'm way cooler now than I ever was. So it's like probably some arrogance that came with that too, misdirected arrogance. So I think that kind of led to a fracture. And then as the tour went on, it just got progressively worse. I was a little bit more isolated. And so when I get back, it was like I found out that they were playing a show with another guy, which ended up being Todd, because he would play a show with them with his old band or whatever. And I found out through like a kid on like Instant Messenger who like told me, he's like, hey, I heard you guys are playing a show. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah. And like Todd's playing with them. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, those motherfuckers. And I was devastated. Like, I mean, just crushed. But yeah, so I called Rob and he's like, let me call you back. And then that's how I found out. But so I was pissed at first for a while. It was hard to get over, but I understood it. The method might have been poorly executed, but the end result, like Todd's a fucking phenomenal bass player. Like he should have been the bass player like all along. So like, yeah, I'm cool with it. I just wish they'd told me in a better way. But like, hey man, we got somebody better, and I would have been like, no, yeah, totally. I'll go back to being the merch guy. Like no problem. Or I'll play cowbell on occasion. You know, no big deal.
Yeah, it seems very. I mean, I love Chris and Rob because they've been one of my a couple of my best friends since I was like 14. Not very good with confrontation back then. Not their strong suits.
No, and I think that, and they have a lot of strong suits, so it's not. I'm not trying to knock them, but I think that the lesson I learned over the years is like there are people that are fucking awesome and they're great friends, and like I love hanging out with them, but I do not want to be in a fucking band with them. It's a very different thing. The personalities really rub up against each other, and there's friction is created from nothing on tour. You know, there's so many tense moments that happen, and like you just run up on each other for such long periods of time and long drives, and everybody's tired, everybody smells, and it's a grind. Little things can set you off, and there's like it just happens. I don't know if there's better communication, stuff like that, I think, which people always develop over the years, which is a shame that most people do bands when they're young. It's like it's almost like you're not equipped emotionally to communicate better and to like understand like your words hurt and things like that. So it's kind of, again, youth is wasted on the young, and it's just one of those things that you kind of learn over the years. But I mean, I adore Chris and Rob. Like I love them so much. Just the opportunity to do that, even in the way it ended, where I was so pissed when it happened, and then I was really hurt. I went through like all 5 stages of grief in like 25 minutes. It was like, fuck those guys. So like, I was like, they didn't kick me out. This is all a big fucking prank. And it was like I went through the whole spectrum, but like in hindsight, I look back on it, I'm like, I'm just super grateful, because it was like I had no business being a part of that, being around that. Again, being there for like the birth of Who Are You Gonna Believe Me or Your Lying Eyes, and witnessing that song getting written. Every time I hear it, I still get fucking pumped up, and I'm like, man, I was there when we were like rehearsing that for the first time. So I look back on it with nothing but fond memories, nothing but gratitude. But it's just like, yeah, it was a bitter pill to swallow at the time for sure.
Yeah, this is like right before they did Rocking Chair Years too.
Yeah. So we were working on, what's the other song that's like I can't remember the name of it now, but it was like the other slow song. It was about the same person that No Rewind's about.
Oh yeah, Christina. It's one of my favorite songs. I have that thing.
Boom, boom, boom.
The Last, the Lucky.
No,
No,
that's another one.
That's
But
Christina.
that's a slow one.
This Is Why We Don't Have Nice Things, Eastern Homes, Western Hearts, Pale in Comparison, Blame Anxiety, Erasing Wilkes, Remembering Brit, Darkness Wash Over the Dude, Everything I Ever Wanted, Monday Morning, Coda. I think I know what you're talking about. I think, yeah, it's one of those slow songs. I thought like
It's like track 6 or something.
Yeah, I thought Lost and the Lucky, when I heard that, I got like chills. I was like, holy shit, this song is amazing.
Oh, dude. Oh, I was gonna say, like when that album came out, I mean, I just remember listening to it and being like, oh my God. And that's when I started kind of getting to that point where I was like, I was a part of this. Like, I don't care that I'm not playing on that record. I don't care that I'm not like in that band anymore. Like, I was a part of what became this record. I was like a very small, like I was 0.0001% of the songwriting process or whatever. Like, I didn't do shit. I was just there. I was just a passenger in that car. But it was like, I was like in some small way connected to this with an unbelievable album. Like I listened to it and I was like, I wanted to cry, because I'm like, I know these guys. Like I know them. Like I'm friends with them. They did this. And it was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that album's so fucking great. I had Chris on like years ago, and we talked about Lanemeyer stuff, and he ended. It's like if people were like looking at the podcast, there's season 1 and 2, but there's really no change in numbers. It's like episode 30 was the last one. That's with Chris, and then I started talking to everybody else after. But it's like it continues season 2. So it's been so long, and I reached out to him, I think like within this year, and I'm like, dude, we got to talk about Day at the Fair, and he just never has time to do it. And I just want to just break down that whole album and just talk about all these fucking songs because they're so fucking good.
Well, it's like when there's certain bands you hear, right? And like I'm not trying to compare like anybody to like anybody, but like you listen to the progression. Let's just say like let's say it's a day or like a Midtown or like a or even like bigger like a Nirvana, right? Like you see that progression going. The first couple albums are good. They're great. Like Gaslight Anthem, another one, right? Like that first album is great. Like I loved it. But then you get to like 59 Sound and you're like, oh my fucking God. How did you make this leap? It's mind boggling. And that was Chris and Date the Fair with that. I thought No Lights on Weldon was great. Like I still have that unmixed copy that he sent me. I listened to it. I was like, this is great. And then, the EP, I was like, oh my God, like these songs are fucking epic. Like I couldn't believe it. And then Rocking Chair Years was just like, you just went to orbit on that one. I'm like, I can't believe people are capable of writing songs like this. It was unreal.
So how did we end up how did you end up at that party where we met?
Oh, so that was Dom from Escape Engine.
Yeah, they're having it was like a show or some shit, and Ben from Armor for Sleep was there, so I like caught up with him and Dom. They were playing in the basement. There's like a video online of them playing in the basement that night.
Was there?
Yeah.
Man, I have weird memories that night then. So I remember, so it was Date the Fair guys went there, and I remember it was like there was some tension at the time between Date the Fair and like Forever Endeavor for some reason. I don't know what happened there. I don't remember.
What happened there was Forever Endeavor's about to play a show in somewhere in Jersey, and Day at the Fair, I think Josh had one of their cabinets. So they drove to the show and they go in and they're like, hey, we're taking our cabinet. And Josh was like, what? And they took the cabinet and just left. And they were like, okay, I guess we need to borrow a fucking cabinet. So I think that might have been what the tension was at the time.
So I didn't know that. And I'm getting fed, fuck those guys type of pre-gaming information. So I went to the party and I remember like the Date the Fair guys like didn't stay that long. And I ended up hanging out with the Forever Endeavor guys a bit. I love them. I was like, oh my God, these guys are great. Like Josh is like one of the funny, like he's one of the like the secretive, like most secretive, funny people in the world. Like that dude makes me cry with laughter. He's so fucking funny. But he's just so deceptive about it because he just seems so like deadpan and like he doesn't smile or anything. He just kind of like just stoically looks at you. And then he'll just say something and I'm like, I can't even breathe. I'm laughing so hard. I met those guys and like Drew and like they were so nice. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck these guys are talking about. Like these guys are phenomenal. And then I think you and I started talking and I remember I was like, oh, I was also wrong about him because he's not a cocky prick. Like he's fucking amazing. And you and I ended up like, I think we like stayed up all night, right? We were like talking and like
I remember a lot of that. There's actually actually real quick though, I do remember another part of the Forever Endeavor thing. Heiner was in Humble. He got kicked out, and then Drew came in to take his place. So Heiner hated Drew forever. So I think that was part of it too. And then they made Forever Endeavor, which was Drew, Josh, Casey, and I forget their bass player's name was. But I think it was early 20s bullshit stuff, which obviously they were fine because Rob's played in Humble again for like reunion shows.
Well, here's the irony. So I remember going on tour when we went on tour the first time, and I remember Rob and I like being up front, like he was driving, and I was like chatting with him, and I remember asking him like, why is there bad blood or like what? I forget. Or he was telling me about his times in different bands that he'd been in, and he told me like that story, and I was like, that's really fucked up. This is the beginning of the second tour. I'm sorry. And so I was like, that's really fucked up. I'm like, listen, man. I'm like, just so you know, I know I'm not a very good bass player. If you guys find somebody better, I will fully support you. Just don't do that to me. And he was like, of course not. Of course I would never do that to you. Fucking asshole.
Yeah, they weren't really graceful about their decisions back then.
God, I was like, we fucking had this conversation, dude. Like, really? But anyway.
Real quick, if you're looking for an explainer video or someone to do motion graphics for your company, check out my company, drive80.com, and you can email me at mike@drive80.com for more info. That's all I got to say. So now back to the interview. Okay, so I remember, like, because you and I were, like, smoking at that time. Like, we were smoking cigarettes, and I was a casual smoker. You were like full time. Like you were like a pack a day kind of guy, right?
Oh fuck yeah.
Yeah, you smoked like a bunch. So I think somehow you and I start talking in like the hallway in this house, and you're like, yeah, man. And you were talking about how you were in Day at the Fair, how you got kicked out. I think I was laughing. I was like, that sounds about right.
No. This is before. I had just joined Day at the Fair.
Oh, you were
like this party.
Oh no!
Yeah, this is like
shit.
my first. This is like my first social outing with me being in the band with them. They were like, "Hey, we're going to this party. You want to come?" So I think we had practice, and then we went to the party afterwards. that wasn't that night. That was probably a different time. But like,
Yeah, because I just remember we were sitting in the hallway talking and ripping butts because I think we were smoking in the house or was something. We just kept talking the whole time, and I was like, we just really bonded. And I remember, yeah, we stayed up until like, I think it was like 4 or 5 in the morning because I think the sun was coming out, and we were both in like recliner chairs, separate ones, and just passed out.
yes. Yeah, it was like Joey and Chandler, like in their matching recliners, and we were just both like sleeping. And then
Yeah.
I fell asleep sitting up, and then I remember we woke up like 2 hours later and like it bailed. But it was like, yeah, it was all night, like just hanging out and chatting. So it was very memorable. But I remember it was again one of those things where I was like, man, I was way off the fucking mark on that guy.
I think you told me that too. I think you were like, I thought you were a fucking like a fucking dick, and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, no, because the thing that you do, dude, that you've always done is like you act like a cocky prick, like as like kind of like a character that you're playing, like you're joking around. But if you
Yeah.
don't know you, like when you do it to me now, like I laugh and like we make jokes or whatever, but like I didn't fucking know you, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Like fuck him, like it was like I didn't know it was a bit. But once I learned that, it's a different story.
Someone told me that recently down here. She's like, you come off really aggressive. I'm like, really? Do I? She's like, yeah, when they first meet you, because you just make jokes and just kind of like try to see where someone's at. And she's like, some people just can get rubbed the wrong way about that. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. That's just what I
You like
do.
kind of test the boundaries a little bit and see like what you can kind of get away with and what's yeah, and it's also kind of a gauge of like what is your sense of humor like if I'm kind of saying this stuff where it's like I remember when like Dan Ryan like first brought his now wife around and you were like and you went up to her and you're like you'll do.
I don't remember that.
She was like what?
Yeah, I was a little bit more. It was like now I feel like it's like a copperhead, right? They've the adult ones can control the venom when they're young. They just spray it everywhere and they don't. That's uncontrollable. I feel like that was me in my late teens, early 20s. I was just like firing shots
Oh
everywhere.
yeah, no,
Thinking it was hilarious.
It was a fire hose of copperhead venom.
So when we met, I had just moved back from California, so all the Arcade Academy stuff, I started writing in California, and then we played shows out there. Like I put a band together with it was this one guy, James, who is one of my favorite people in the world. My friend Beth, who you know Beth, she had introduced us. So I'm in San Diego, and I didn't really like him when I first met him. I was like, he's kind of, I was like, I don't know, he was like kind of cocky or something. And then we got together and played. I was like, oh, he's like one of the sweetest people ever. So it was like him, this guy Corey, who was a really good guitar player, and this guy Mike, who was in John Cougar concentration camp. He was like their drummer. So we started that there, and then I moved back to Jersey to go to school, and I'm going through all that stuff, and that's where like Date the Fair is playing shows, and I start getting back into the Jersey scene and just hating it. I was like, what the fuck happened here? And then that leads to you and I meeting, and we just kind of kept in touch. I think this is when we had like flip phones, and we would like text. We were texting each other and just like building that friendship like through that way.
Yeah, like the T9 texting
Yeah. Did we like?
sucked.
Were we seeing each other at shows? Because there was that one moment where I feel like you called me. I was living in Blairstown. Either I called you or you called me because I remember it as you're like, I have a proposition for you just to be in the band, right? Or did I ask you?
Yes, we were definitely friends because we were texting and stuff like that, and we were definitely seeing each other at shows. And I think you had called me or something after the Date the Fair debacle. You were like, "Hey man, I'm really," and I remember it really meant a lot to me that you like reached out and you were like, "Hey man, that's really fucked up. I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And we were definitely friends. And you know what it was? It was MySpace too. We were really tight on MySpace, like trading, shit back and forth. And yeah, so we were exchanging, messaging each other on MySpace, and like, remember we saw AOL Instant Messenger and things like that. And so we were communicating pretty regularly, I think. And then I believe was Republicon first. Like, I
Oh,
think I kind of,
that's right. I put a note to talk about that. So I had this clothing line in the early 2000s. It was called Republicon because that's when George Bush was in office, and I was very like, and I've never like Sean is very, and I'm like talking to people listening. Sean's very into politics. He like reads about this shit, and he's like very aware of what's going on, educated and stuff. I'm like, I just was kind of like, I'm not really about the Iraq War, and like I dip a toe into politics, but I started this clothing line, and I moved back, and I was trying to sell. I had like stickers and stuff like that. It wasn't, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but it got me into graphic design. And then I think we got involved in that first. Like you
yes.
wanted to jump
Yeah.
on
So,
because, yeah.
because it was 2004, so like the election was happening, and I remember being like, dude, you should really fucking be like making sure, because like that no that Will Kill for Oil shirt
Yeah, it was like Bush's. I had made a shirt. It was like Bush's portrait of him, but it was like
silhouette.
outline. It was a silhouette was outlined and it said
Yeah,
"Will kill for oil" underneath. It was like pretty aggressive for like just wearing it around.
so aggressive. But it was that was such a memorable. I think I still have one of those somewhere, and it was like such a good shirt. I remember it was just so catchy and like it just stuck out in my mind. I was like, that's fucking amazing. You need to like really kind of run with this. The problem is that I kind of fucked it up because I get too deep in like the fucking references and shit that like that was a very simple like effective message. Whereas I remember like one of the shirts I came up with was like a map, like a silhouette map of Iraq with like
Yeah, the
a
oil
soldier,
barrels.
and yeah, and it was like one soldier per like 100,000 barrels of oil or whatever. And it was like that's way too fucking like abstract. Like that you're getting way into the weeds with people, and like most people in this country, like half the population doesn't know who our current vice president is, who also happens to be running for president. So like you can't expect that kind of level of that's just a little too highbrow for, not that I'm some genius or anything like that, but it was just like way too in the weed. Like I'm assuming that everybody's reading the same shit that I'm reading and like knows the data that I'm perusing and all that, and it's like no fucking way. So it's just way over people's heads, I think.
Well, it was funny because I started it because Adam Brush, he had this clothing company called Destroy, which was very much like Obey. And I'm living in San Diego, and I knew Adam because he went to school with my buddy Bob Beichel. So Adam comes out to do this convention where he's setting up a table, and I helped him out. And I'm like, wait, you can make a living off of this? This is so cool. So I was kind of trying to almost like get into that, what would be a little bit standoffish or something, or just really catch someone off guard. And that's how the whole clothing thing happened. So when I brought it back, I'm looking at him as like an inspiration of how to do it. Then I'm going through, I'm like going to Chubb and Parsippany. I'm going through like its graphic design. So I'm doing all this stuff. Then you and I are talking, and you're throwing me ideas. I remember that shirt too, because I liked that design. But it was really fucking in your face. Like then the website I created
No.
in Flash, it looked like a news guy who was talking like with news about like Fox News or some shit.
Yeah. And yeah, so it was pretty aggressive. And like, but I remember that's how we got started, because then we were communicating regularly because we were throwing ideas back and forth. And like, and I think that was the problem too, is that we were really reliant on the printers to like to use common sense when it came to like print. Like, so for example, that Iraq, oil barrel shirt, like it was so small
Yeah,
compared to like how we envisioned it.
I remember
And it
that.
was like, well, clearly when you're setting up the fucking screen, you're going to see this is too small. So you're going to enlarge it. And they didn't. So it was a lot of stuff like that happening. And it was really annoying. But yeah, that's how we got started talking. And then you sent me the Arcade Academy demo that you debated with Casey.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Actually, prior to that, though, there was one show that you went to where you took like, again, this is also, people listen, this is when the Rock Against Bush thing comes out. So like punk rock is starting to really get involved politically. Besides bands like Propaganda, like Fat Mike comes out and he's like really doing this whole platform. And you get this giant cardboard cutout of George Bush, bring it to a show, and set up like a merch table to sell like the shirts. Do you remember doing this? And I wasn't
Yes, I
there.
do.
And I can imagine like how uncomfortable that must have been.
I remember using that cutout too. I would leave it like around the house all the time for my brother to find. Like he'd go into the bathroom or something. That thing would be in the shower, and he was like, "Fuck!" This is George W. Bush standing there.
Yeah, so I come back and I had these songs that I had written in California, so I wanted to record them. So Casey from Lanemeyer, he had Paradigm Studios in like Clifton or something, or Patterson. So I go record with him, do 3 songs. I think that was it. Like maybe I gave you that demo because I remember the conversation that we had when we decided to do the band together, because I was living in Blairstown. I went down to get like Chinese food or like pizza from the A&P Center that's in Blairstown, and it's like 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock at night, and it's dark, and I'm in the parking lot, and I'm talking to you on the phone, and I think that you said, "Hey man, what would you think about me, like us doing the band together?" I think that's how I remember it happening.
Yeah. So prior to that, though, like after Date the Fair, I was so pissed. I was like, they're not going to stop me from achieving my dreams of playing in a band. So I reached out to this band called September Sky, which they were up in Wilkes-Barre, and they were super nice, like funny as hell, great guys. And they had been looking for a bass player. We played a show with them when I was in Date the Fair, and they didn't have a bass player, and they'd mentioned that. And so I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, if you guys still need a bass player, I'd love to audition. And they were like, no, fuck that. Like, just come up and like come to practice. So they were great. I was in that band, but it was very impractical. It was like a very like spiteful thing on my part where I was like, I'm going to keep playing. Like, Date the Fair's not going to stop me. And I'll drive those 3 hours each way to fucking practice, which
That was
was
so
insane.
insane, man. That was crazy. Like just for one practice and to
For
drive
one
home.
practice.
I remember you told me this. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah, it was a very immature, but I did love those guys. So like I didn't mind as much as if it was like a band I fucking was just doing it out of spite completely. But it was definitely impractical. But I remember it was funny too because that was another reason why we hung out was like the midway point was like your mom's house in Blairstown. So I would
Oh my
like
God, that's right.
stop off and hang out. We watched Game 4 of the ALCS in 2004.
Yeah, we watched fucking. I'm watching that documentary on Netflix. I started it last night when they're going through the Sox, that whole series. You come over to my mom's house in Blairstown. And you're like, oh, it's Game 4 of the World Series, and I grew up. My family's from Massachusetts, so born a Red Sox fan, but I don't really pay attention too much. And you're like, yeah, they're playing the Yankees, and I'm like, oh, I fucking hate the Yankees. So we go in the basement and we get pizza and we're watching it, and then fucking Ortiz gets up, hits that fucking grand slam. And we're going like crazy, and then it just like proceeds for them just to sweep the Yankees and then take the championship. Like that moment, like the only reason I got into that series is because you came over and we were watching that. I totally fucking forgot about that.
That was like one of the greatest games, like great. I mean, it was the start of the greatest comeback in baseball, America, any championship series like history, because it was nobody's ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. So it was like unbelievable to be a part of that. And then, so like that further bonded us. It was like, okay.
Yes.
But I remember this, that was, since you were like the midway point, there was a lot of times I would go. And I remember, I think that night specifically, like practice had been canceled, but I was around my way. So I was like, I was like, hey, can I come by or something like that? But I ended up staying with you and not going to, like, there was no practice that night. But anyway, so like when you sent me the demo, yeah, I decided I was like, when I called you that time, I was like, hey man, like these songs are really good. Like I really love this. I think it's awesome. Like if you put a band together, like I want to be in it. I want to be the bass player or guitar if you decide to play bass. And you were like, wait, you're in September Sky. And I was like, no, I'll take care of that. and like I wasn't being a dick. I knew they would understand. Like they knew it was very unrealistic for me to be able to make that drive every week or whatever. So they were super cool and supportive.
And they were great. I loved, yeah, and we got to play with them later on, which we could talk about. But like, I loved those fucking guys. It was like,
oh my god,
Jay, right? Wasn't it the guitar player?
Jay, Ronnie was the other guitar player.
They were nuts, man.
Yeah, Ronnie and Jay especially, they were crazy, but they were such good dudes.
Yeah, stories we can definitely not tell on this podcast. Like we can't talk about that shit.
You're gonna need a higher MPAA rating on that.
Yeah. How do we find Dan? Dan Ryan, good old Dancel. He's so hot right now.
Dancel. So yeah, so we you started talking about you had ideas for people in the band, and you were the one like, I know this kid Dan, and I remember I was like, oh cool, whatever. And then the first practice, like he showed up, and I was like, how old is this kid? Like,
yeah,
and you're like, oh yeah, he's young. And what was he, like 18, 19? I know he was like 18, I think,
something
right?
like that. Yeah,
he was really young, and I remember being like disgusted that you brought like a child to the fucking band practice. I was like, damn it.
Where was it at? Was it backstage?
Yeah, it was at that recording studio.
No, it's backstage. The one in Clifton. It's like all red brick.
Yeah, isn't it a studio too, or it's just rehearsal space?
It's I think they might have had a room for recording, but it was all like rehearsal studios. Like they had a room all the way in the back where they had a stage you could practice, and that was like the big room.
Yes, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I think we did practice. Do we have a second guitar player at that point? Or like I'm trying to think of what the order was, because like we never toured, but we would play shows and we went through a bunch of guitar players. But wasn't Metal Matt? Was he the first one?
No, Andy Spratt.
Oh my god, that's right. Another band that I kicked Andy out of. Yeah, that's right. Holy shit, that's right. He was in the band. And we played that one. I don't know how many shows we played, but there was that one we played where it was that ska band that Josh from Humble was in. And they played like towards the end. So we show up. Remember, like Andy like sat down and was playing.
Sure do.
And
sure do.
And I think after that, I was like, "Nope, you're out." Which I feel bad. I know Andy listens to this. I feel so bad that I've like kicked him out of like 2 bands. But...
No, I love Andy, but like I remember, I think I looked at you on stage, and I think we had the exact same thought. I was like,
yeah.
Fuck this guy for sitting down in the middle of a goddamn show. I was like, I don't know what the fuck he's doing. I don't know what's going on right here. I don't know if this is like Andy Kaufman-esque performance art, but like, I don't like it.
Oh, that's totally right. And then when did we get when did you buy Day at the Fair's van?
Oh, I don't know. It was,
you got it like $200, right? Or something?
No, I think I paid more than that for that. But I know they played a show at like Starland, and I got kicked out, but I stuck back in, and because I was way drunk. And but I bought it. I think we talked about it that night. So it was them opening for Less Than Jake. That's all I remember was so whatever time period that was, what year that was, I don't remember. But I want to say like it had to be '05 or '06.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, so we ended up buying that stupid thing, and it was just parked in Dan Ryan's house forever.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
going back to Dan Ryan, like he ended up being like one of the most wonderful people, like so mature beyond his years, like one of the nicest
He was
guys.
such an old man at the age of 18, 19, whenever we got him in the band.
Oh yeah, dude.
He must have been 21. Like, he had to have been because he was drinking. Remember, he would drink, um,
His Zimas.
well, it was Zivas. That's right. He was such a pussy with drinking.
No, but he was not 21 for sure. Because I remember he did turn 21 while he was in the band. Like we had already been together for a while, but he was definitely not 20. He was like 19.
Well, he would drink Everclear. And I said he was a pussy drinker. Like, he would drink
Yes.
Everclear, would mix it, and I was like,
Yes.
bro, what the fuck? But like, yeah, so we get Dan, and then we have Andy kick him out, and then we go to record with Ryan Selleck at his studio.
Yeah, but I think before that we had Matt Wasser in the band before recording. No.
I thought Matt came in after, because Ryan was in the band for like 2 shows after we recorded those songs. We did No Rewind and Welcome to Home Stretch.
Yeah, but I think the reason why was because Matt Wasser had gotten like tendonitis in his arms, so he couldn't play anymore. He had to take a break,
Oh,
if I remember that correctly. And just to talk about him for a minute,
yeah.
he's passed in 2007, killed by a drunk driver. But he was, I remember, I think it was Dan that brought him, and he was friends with him, and he was like, "Yeah, I got this guy," and he was like, "He's a really good guitar player, but he's kind of like looks like a metal dude. He's like a big metal dude." And I was like, "What does that mean?" Because there's plenty of people I know that love metal music, but you wouldn't know it. Like there's a guy on Wall Street, like in a fucking three-piece suit, and he loves Skid Row, but you wouldn't know that about him. Matt, it was very clear that he
Yeah.
loves metal. I mean, he stepped right out of like a Whitesnake video from
Yeah.
1986, and I was like, "Holy shit, this fucking guy!" And I'm like, "He's young. He's like a little bit older. I think it was a year or two older than Dan, or the same age." And I'm like, "How does he like this music? And how is he like? How does he look like this? He looks like a fucking 80s metal guy, like legitimately." But he came, and I remember he was I mean, ungodly on that guitar. Like he was just like a virtuoso, like I've never been in the presence of before. And he was the nicest guy and the sweetest guy. I mean, just what an absolute joy to be around that guy. Like he was just wonderful in every way. So I loved him.
And all he did was just listen to the Yankees all the fucking time.
Oh yeah.
AM radio and shit, just listening to games. Like, if we were driving, and he would just have his headphones in, just be listening to that shit.
Yeah. I loved I mean, the Yankees, their broadcast booth is named after him, I believe, because he was an intern for them. And he did such a good job working for the Yankees as an intern that they like kind of basically like loaned him out to MLB. So in 2007, when I think it was the Red Sox were playing against, I want to say the Indians in the ALCS, MLB asked him to go up there to cover it, and he was in the back of the cab, and that's how he got hit by a drunk driver, and that's what killed him.
Yeah, it was like he was leaving the game, going back to his hotel, and the driver was like leave. He was a Sox fan, and he like was hammered, and he was driving home and like plowed into the back, and it was like fuck.
Correct, and it was just so devastating, but he was so beloved. I mean, we remember his funeral. It was like 1,000 people there.
Oh
It was
yeah.
unbelievable, but the Yankees loved him so much that they named. I think they did a scholarship for him. I think they did a bunch of stuff, and they sent like a signed ball.
They put like a plate of his name or something like over like
Yeah,
the door or something like that for one of the
I think
rooms.
it was I think it's in the broadcast studio or the broadcast booth or something. It was something like that. But it was, yeah, they honored him, and they still honor him to this day, which justifiably so. Like he was wonderful in every way. So I was devastated when he passed. But anyway, not to bring everything down, but he was great, and but I think the only reason he couldn't play anymore is because of his tendonitis. It had acted up.
So that actually reminded me. So I can now tell the timeline of the band based on the van, right? So we we have Andy, we kick him out, we go to record with Selleck and him and Scars. So we record. Remember that's when I was singing and I had those crazy headaches when I would sing.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and that opera singer chick on MySpace told you what to do, and it fixed it.
Well, no, I got I had a wisdom tooth that was impacted.
Oh, I thought it was because you're breathing incorrectly.
No, I was I think because what happened was I had a we're at practice and we're at backstage and I hit this note and I get this screaming like headache. It shoots through my head and I was like on the ground. I'm like, what the fuck is that? So anytime I tried to do a high note, it would come back. And then and it happened, this was like after the studio, because in the studio I was hitting high notes. I had a wisdom tooth at the time, so it was impacted. So I go a couple weeks later and get it taken out. So then we asked Selleck to be in the band, and we're at the Brighton Bar in Monmouth or wherever, like down the Jersey Shore.
Long Branch.
In Long Branch, thank you. And so I was like, all right, I might not be able to sing these songs. And we think we put it on MySpace. So we're like, if anyone wants to get on the mic, we're going to do kind of maybe a karaoke if I can't do the songs. Remember that?
Yep.
And
yeah,
then
Parker.
Yeah, then Parker, also who has passed away, he showed up with like the lyrics of "Fuck You and Your Boyfriend." So we were going to play that. So we get there, Selleck's playing guitar, completely hates the whole thing that we're doing. Like I remember we were going to play one song, and he was like, on stage, he's like, "Do we really have to play that?" And I was like, "Oh, this guy's not going to last at all."
No, he hated everything about like. It required him being like he was a sick guitar player. All the lead guitar parts, well, not all of them, but I think a lot of the lead guitar on those demos was him, right? Like he came up with those riffs and stuff, like
Yeah.
those little But you could, I mean, it's not like I love that guy, but he's good just recording and doing his behind the scenes stuff and smoking his weed. He's not gonna want to be on stage and like jumping around and shit. Like that's just not him. So he was a great guitar player, but he's just not his vibe at all. So it was like, yeah, it's not a good fit.
Yeah, I think that was his last show. So we're playing this, and I'm hitting the notes, and I'm fine because I'm like recovering from this wisdom tooth thing. Then Parker comes on. He has like the lyric sheet in front of him, and he's trying to sing the song, and he can't. And we're just like having a good time. I felt like we just always had like really like just such a fun fucking time when we play.
Yeah,
that's when we had the shirts too. They said, "I wish my boyfriend was in Arcade Academy." And we gave it to the bartender. And she wore it.
So many girls wore those shirts and they had boyfriends. It was so funny. Like I just love seeing that so much. But Parker was another one. Like he was so like, and he was one I really, again, it was one of those things where it's like I got it because like I was that guy. He was so overjoyed to be up there. I mean, he was nervous as hell, but he did a great job and he did it. And he was so thrilled to be a part of it. And I was like, I totally get that, dude. Like I still feel that way, even when I'm like pissed off or like tired or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's such a cool feeling. And to give him that, like, I was so happy that we got to do it and he got to do it. And I mean, he took a train down from New York to get to the Brighton Bar. And like, that's how much he loved the band. It was awesome.
Yeah, he was such a good dude. It's weird when I'm on Facebook and I'll like it'll be like a time hop and he shows like he has a comment on there. I'm like, oh my god, this is so fucking crazy.
I know. It breaks my heart, dude. It breaks my heart.
So yeah, so then that was show. We kick Ryan out after that, and he was like, that's fine. And then Dan goes, I got this buddy, and that's when Matt came in because I remember I think our first show with him, we played a show with Day at the Fair at some Legion Hall. I think like Ashley put that on. And it was them and Bird Sting.
Yes. Tim Woosley's brother's band, right?
Yeah. And so Rod's in that, Rod Woosley, Josh Victor, and then their guitar player. They all went to like Jefferson High School, but I remember their guitar player, I'm fucking forgetting his name. He was so drunk, he was just like throwing bottles like up in the sky, like over a fence into the parking lot or some shit. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing right now?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we played that show, and that was the first time that Matt played with us, and we were like, oh, this is fucking awesome.
Dude, he was so good. I remember just being like stunned because like every show was different with him too. That was the other thing that was amazing is that he never played the same like kind of like runs. Like he just kind of like improvised every time, but it was always like sick. It was always like, oh my God, that's like an unbelievable guitar solo or whatever. And but every show was like different. He would incorporate something new, and it was like, holy fuck.
Yeah, and he had that like face when he played, like just like, yeah, I'm fucking just shredding right now, and he's
like, yeah. Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah, his other one was just a joy to like. He just had so much joy all the time. Like he loved doing it. He loved playing, and like it wasn't his kind of music at all. But he made it. He kind of incorporated so many of the elements of stuff that he liked into what we were doing, and it still made sense, which is crazy. But it did. And it was just unbelievable watching him go.
Yeah, I remember that night too. That was the only fight that you and I ever got in, I think, in our entire history. Yeah, we I don't know how I'm remembering all this. It's so funny. It's like we're just basically gonna be like shows. I definitely want to talk about. We went to fucking New Bedford that one time, or it wasn't Lowell. It's where Ross was up. So we go outside, and we get in this like I remember like at the Brighton Bar show, like you and Dan didn't like each other at the show, and like you guys had a thing for a minute. Then we're at this Legion Hall show. There's a wedding going on like upstairs.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
So there's like a wedding, and they're coming down. They're like, "This is so much fun." And then you and I, for some reason, we get in this tiff. So anyone listening, there's this like brown van, which is like not a Sprinter van, but it's almost like a.
It was like an airport. It was like an airport shuttle van.
Yes, and
Like it had like the opening doors, like a school bus doors, and then it like you could see if we had seats in it, would have sat like 20 people in there.
Yeah. So Sean like buys this from Day at the Fair, and I'm like, "That's awesome." And then you and I got in something. And I think I remember you were like, I got this van, and I was like, well, that was your fucking decision. And we were like, and you were just like, oh, I need a break for a second just to walk away from you. Do you remember this at all?
No, I don't remember that. I have such a glossy, like, perfect
Oh no.
remembrance of all of our interactions.
No, man.
I don't remember that at all.
You and Dan were at each other's throats for some reason for a minute. And I forget what the fuck that was about. And then you and I, just for like a second, and then I think like later that night, I was like, hey, sorry, man. And you were like, no, man, like whatever doesn't kill us, makes us stronger. You said that to me. And I was like, all right, we're good.
Yeah. Definitely don't remember that at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, like really the whole history of the band is like we really just played in Jersey. We went up to Wilkes-Barre a couple times. We played that pizza place.
Yep. We went up there. New Hampshire, Massachusetts.
Well, before those, remember we played that Halloween show and we dressed up as Whitesnake? And this was right after that club burned down.
Oh my God, that was awful.
I thought we were gonna get like killed.
So mortified. Yeah, we like burned our clothes. Yeah. Like I had like holes and like char marks all over my clothes, and like I put like charcoal on my face, and it was so tasteless. I'm mortified that I did that. Apologies to like the victims of Great White.
Yeah, and it was was it Whitesnake or Great White? It was Great White.
Great White.
Yeah, like it was your idea, and I was like, this is genius. And we play that club. It starts with an L. It's in like northern Jersey. It was a pretty popular divey bar.
It was like in Clifton. It was like in Clifton or something, I think.
Yeah. Loop Lounge?
I can't remember the name of it. Loop Lounge, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, so we play Loop Lounge. So we get on stage, and I'm so nervous to say what we are, because it's a Halloween show, and everyone's dressed up. And there's like a decent amount of people there, like, I don't know, 60, 70 maybe. And we get on stage, and I was like, hey, everyone, we're Great White. And we start playing. I thought when I said that, everyone's going to turn on us. Nobody fucking got it, and nobody cared.
Nobody got it. Yeah, nobody cared. Yeah. I think there's a couple people that were disgusted, but that was pretty much it. But
I was more annoyed at that. I was like, really? You don't fucking get what this is?
You guys are into current events, are you?
Yeah, so we did that, and then we did that show, and then we went up to we did that pizza show. I mean, and then we played Hamilton Street. That's when you did you were making fun of the Screamo bands.
Oh my God, yeah. So that was Bloomfield Avenue, Bloomfield Ave Cafe.
No, it was Hamilton Street.
Are you sure?
Yeah, there's a video online. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was Bloomfield Ave, but I remember that was a band, like we were headlining that for some reason, but it was like 5 bands that played it. And I remember the band a couple before us was like these little kids, like their parents were helping them load in, and we were like, oh. Then I remember their name was like Amore or Amory or something like that. I didn't realize it. I thought their name was Armory, so I was like, hey, Armory, you guys are really good. And the kid, like the lead singer, was like, it's fucking Amory, like oh fucking aggro. And I was like, dude, you're 10, like fuck off. And I laughed so hard. I remember I went up to you and I was like, dude, I'm like, you got to get a load of this. I told you what happened, and you were like, I'll be right back. And you go over and you're like, hey Armory, you guys are really good. This Amory. And they got so fucking mad. Like you could just see them like, Mom, take my guitar and storm out of here, like in a huff, because like they were so pissed. And then I remember when we played, because they were a Screamo band, and they were like so serious. Like they were just so serious. Like they didn't smile. They weren't like happy to be there. They were just like, man, like we got to fucking put in our time, like whatever, before we hit it big. So I remember when Diner Parking Lots, when we closed with that's when I did my part as like a Screamo thing, just to piss them off.
It was on YouTube for a while.
For a while, yeah. I don't know if it's still on there, but yeah.
I think that's when we got Steve from Jettison LWL to be in the band.
Yeah, so after Matt left because of the tendonitis, that had to be around like 2006 or 7 or so, right around there, right? And then we asked Steve. Yeah, so Steve was like, we were like, hey man, like you're not playing, you're not doing anything right now. Like we need a second guitar player. Would you like to? And he was like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So he reluctantly joined.
Didn't like we were playing, and you used to always get us shows at what was that bar in Boonton, the Boonton Bar and Grill.
Boone Avenue Grill, yeah. And then the place in Madeline, we were playing there a couple times, didn't we? And then we played other place too in like North Jersey with Matt Pick's band, Doghouse Riley.
Oh yeah, those are the guys from Felix Front.
Yeah. Anthony and Mike Saporito, and then my friend Matt Pick, and then they I remember that was when they put a poster up that we were playing, and they listed us as Arcade Family, which I still had that poster. And Matt wanted it, so I gave it to him because I had their name on it. It was like Doghouse Riley and Arcade Family. I was like, ew.
Yeah, it was like I think that show, one of the shows we played, Steve used to flip his guitar around, and it like,
Oh my God, yeah.
it almost like hit me, or it hit his amp, and it like fell off or some shit.
Yeah, he did that too at like a show we played in like New York. We played at like one of the 500 Blarney Stone bars, and like I remember he did that spin. I think he hit a fucking ceiling tile.
I mean, the biggest thing that I got from the, I mean, I definitely want to talk more shows. I mean, anyone listening, it's like I'm basically just gonna go over like shows we played. Like I said, we never toured. We played in like Pennsylvania, played that one show in New Hampshire. We played up in where Russ. We like drove up. Hold on, let me just fucking sidetrack here for a second. So this is like the time where I come back, was in Lanemeyer, leave because the band breaks up, go to California, come back, gig in graphic design. Really, the whole premise of this podcast is because of this time period when I come back and notice everything's going in a different direction that I didn't like. We start this band, and I just felt like every time we played, like just literally I said before, it's like nobody gave a shit, and it was so hard to compete in that fucking scene at that time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was like I think we missed the mark. You know, like we missed the time that would have been better for us. You know, like I think we were a little bit late to the game, and I think that we didn't have the patience because we weren't like young and hungry. You know, we all had jobs, we all had shit to do, so it was like I think it was kind of like, yeah, we don't really want to put too much more time into this. You know, like we never even talked about doing like a proper tour or anything. We were just like, yeah, we couldn't.
I think you wanted, like, you really were pushing more for things like that. I think you maybe wanted to, and I was like, there's no fucking way I'm ever doing that shit again.
Well, I wanted to do like short jaunts. Like I didn't want to go to like California or anything, but I thought like if we go to like kind of what we were doing, like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, like we do like a run of New England shows, or we do like Pennsylvania and like Delaware or whatever, or even go so far as like Ohio or something, but like not like a national tour. Like I wouldn't want to be on the road for like a month, but I figured like we could do like week long. My thought was like we do a week at a time here and there. And that was kind of like what I envisioned. Yeah, it still was impractical. And it was still like, you know, we didn't really have the fan base. We didn't really have like the infrastructure to do that.
We had like 0 people who liked us.
Yeah, but that's about right.
Yeah, there was like no one who gave a shit. I thought the songs we did were pretty good. Like it was just so, I don't know. That style was just so outdated, which I was just so mad about. And I was just so like annoyed with stuff. I think that was another thing too. Like I'm like, no one cares. I don't want to keep doing this. Like even thinking about these stories, I'm thinking just about these shows we played, and it was so much fucking fun because it was just us hanging out on the weekends basically.
Yeah, and but I think, you know, I don't think it's fair to say we didn't have any fans. I mean, we had fans. I think, you know, a lot of them were our friends and stuff, but we had people that really liked us. I mean, like, I remember, like, the Sad Cafe. Those people were so great. Like, they just really were, like, lovely, and, like, they were really enthusiastic. And, like, I don't know, the people that we talked to on MySpace and stuff, like, there were some people that were really like, I love you guys and blah, blah. And I was like, wow, really? I remember being like, I think the drummer from, like, wasn't even that band that, like, they had a couple songs in, like, Van Wilder. Really catchy as fuck, their first album. The ones like Stuck in America and I forget the name of that band, but they were really relatively big. I mean, they were in that all over that soundtrack. And like the drummer reached out and was like, "Yeah, I really like your music." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Holy shit!"
Wait, who was this? I don't know this at all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I told you that, but it was
Sugar Cult?
what the hell's the name of it? Sugar Cult? Yeah,
Oh my god, I think I do remember that.
yeah, him and actually the sax player from Less Than Jake too, Jr. Like he reached out one time and was like, "Hey man, like you guys sound really good," and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Okay,
So that was pretty
wow.
cool.
That's crazy. Holy shit.
Yeah, but there's people that liked us, but it was like, but just, you know what, the thing was, I think the market was so saturated. There were so many bands that were doing it, and they were doing it a lot more effectively. Like they had like booking agents, and they had like they had kind of like the infrastructure to do it, and we didn't have that, or we didn't have the patience, and we were all old and bitter, like older and bitter. Like you were bitter about the scene. I was still bitter about Day at the Fair. And, you know, Dan was kind of just old, you know, an old 21-year-old. Like he was ready for like retirement and going to a nursing home and just like, you know, waiting for the mailman to come every day. And then the rotating guitar players didn't help because we had no consistency. So it was kind of always, and I think like every guitar player always felt very tenuous. Like they're not going to last long. And Steve, like, was like the longest tenured one, but like Steve is so talented and he can write songs and he could do his own thing. At the drop of a hat, he could just put a message out on MySpace and be like, "Hey, I'm going to start a new band. Who wants to be in?" And he would have 500 messages. So it's hard to kind of be like all on the same page when you have all those different personalities, all those different like, levels of talent. And like, it's just, I think it's very hard to kind of manage all that and kind of keep it like focused and everybody kind of going in the same direction. So, it was kind of happens, but whatever. Yeah, you're right. I think all the shows were so much fun and like we enjoyed the shit out of all of them for sure.
What was we were driving to New Hampshire. No, we drove up. It's God, this is gonna kill me. It's north of New Bedford. So Russ from All About Records, he had a record store and he put shows on. So we literally drove up. I think it was like a Friday or a Saturday, and we drove up there. We played the show when we came back. However, I want to point out the infamous Sean Bergin Dance video.
So if I remember correctly,
wait, hold on. Sean. Okay. So Sean had this. Something went on in his life. It was a pretty life-changing event.
You can say it. My dad died.
So Sean's dad passes away, and it's just pretty fresh. So we're driving to New Hampshire or to Massachusetts. Sean gets a 6-pack of Red Stripe.
Wait, hold on. Wait, you gotta stop right there because the night before we stayed at Dan's house to get an early start, and he lived in Burnsville. He had a beautiful house, with his dad, whatever. And so we stayed there, and I got annihilated that night because it was relatively soon after my dad died. And I woke up and I was like, I need more beer. And you were like, wait, dude, we got to go to fucking Massachusetts. And I was like, well, just make a stop, stop at a liquor store. And I remember like that's why I started drinking. So I drank the whole way up. Like so you can continue from there.
Yeah. So he's like maybe 3 or 4 in, and there's a truck stop off of 95 right in Connecticut somewhere, I think. And
Connecticut.
I remember because I would pass by. I'd stopped there multiple times years after when I was going to visit family, and I'm like, this is that truck stop or that whatever. And so we stop, and so we all like go to take a piss, and we come back, and then there's like a song on. What was playing?
It was The Forever Endeavor by The Forever Endeavor.
Yes,
which I love that song so much. That's still like one of my all-time favorite songs. Like it's just so catchy. It makes me like just want to jump around and bop around because it's just so upbeat and wonderful. So like, yeah, I was drunk and I started doing this whole like interpretive dance routine to that song, like in the parking lot. And like that video was really fun. I don't know where that video went. I have a DVD somewhere.
I thought it's on YouTube.
No, is it? No, I hope not.
I thought it was.
I got a fucking career, man. I don't want that thing on there.
Yeah.
I know I have it somewhere. Like I saved like the video file somewhere. Like there's a DVD floating around or something I have. But that video, remember, was so funny because you could just hear you giggling the whole time in the background. Like it was so fucking funny. But like that was something that was actually a way that also I wooed my wife because she saw that, and every time she told me like before we were married, before we were friends for a long time before we got married, and she used to watch that video at work when she was having a tough day at work just to cheer her up.
I mean, it's so funny because Sean just stands outside of the passenger seat. He's hammered, and he sings the entire song and is dancing to it. And people are walking by, and he's like pointing at them as he's singing.
Yeah,
it's one of the. You have to fucking find that. Like,
if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Like, I won't post it anywhere.
I don't care. But I mean, I was just joking about that. But I don't care. But yeah, it was a ludicrous thing. But I remember we played that show after we went up there, and I remember that was I think the only time I've ever like immediately after a show like ran out to the parking lot and like vomited.
Yeah, you were like just a zombie on stage. There was like 20 kids there or something, and
yeah,
we were like, we're gonna fucking leave. Now this is the one thing too that I wanted to point out. Like I remember we were driving and we're on the Sawmill Parkway, and they have those bridges that are kind of round and they're brick or stone or whatever. They say like maximum height is this, and I think I'm driving. I look at Dan because then you like moved to the back, and Dan Ryan's in the front with me. We were coming up to one of those bridges, and it says that, and we look at each other. We're going like 70 miles an hour, and we're like, are we going to hit this fucking thing? And we like literally our eyes like widened as we went under it, and we made it, and we were like, holy shit, like we could have just died right there. Did I ever tell you about that?
A nice little, no, I don't remember that. Like we had this little convertible bus.
Yeah, it was very tall. We looked at each other like, we don't know how tall this thing is. Like I thought like we were going to, and like, and then we had like a couch or two in the back, so there was no seat belts. And I think Metal was sitting. Metal Matt. I think he was on the couch. Yeah, but we were like freaked out about that. But yeah, we go up there and we like drove home, and then we just like went to Dan Ryan's and like just got hammered there. So like, I guess like when did it like? How did it finally like stopped. Like, do you remember our last show? Like, we didn't have a last show, but like the last show we played, and then it just like ended.
Remember we played a show at like a firehouse in Old Bridge or something? That was like I want to say it was with the Youth Ahead. I think they like played with us, right? Yeah, that was like one of the last ones. And then I think the very last show, if it wasn't the last one, it was a close one, was that one we played at Boonton Avenue Grill where we had Chris play oh my God, what's the name of the last song on the EP, the first EP?
On Day of the Fair CP?
Yeah, on the
Oh,
Prelude.
I have no idea. Oh, the Angel song or
The
something?
really pretty, yeah, Homesick
Homesick
Angels.
Angels. He played that with it? We played that with him? Or he played it by himself?
You don't remember that, dude? Yes, it was a benefit show for a friend of a friend's cousin who passed away, and like we put on this benefit show, and like we played that song. We talked to Chris about it ahead of time, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." We were raising money for like cancer or whatever it was that was the charity we were doing, whatever, and so we ended up closing with that song. Like Chris came up and sang it, and we learned it. We practiced with him a couple times, and that was like the only time I think they ever, if I'm not incorrect, I think that's the only time they've ever played that song or he's ever played that song live. Because it's such a complicated, like, there's so many, that arrangement is so difficult with like the orchestral arrangement and all that stuff. It was like epic. It was such a cool like experience, And I think Rob came up and played too. I think it was like Yumi, Rob, Chris, like Steve, like it was awesome. So I'm pretty sure that was our last show. I think that was kind of like we were like, well, it's a pretty good fucking way to go out. Like we don't really have any desire to keep this going. I think Dan at that point was done. We had Dave Patino playing drums.
Yeah, no, and then Dan came to the show.
Yeah, Dan came to the
Dan was
show.
like, he's like, I heard something, I can't make it, and we're like, all right, fuck it. We get Patino to fill in, and then Dan shows up to watch it, and I was like, this is uncomfortable.
No, but I think that Dan was already at that point. Like he was kind of already into his career. I mean, he was like doing heavy duty photography of like houses and stuff, which is what he does now. Like he owns his own business and he's kind of doing that out in Arizona. I actually talked to him a few weeks ago.
Oh, really? I haven't talked to him forever.
Yeah. It had been a few years and I was like, dude, man, I lost so much touch with people during COVID. Like I want to reconnect. So I reached out to him and we just kind of caught up and stuff. And he's doing well. It's Arizona, so it's fucking hot and gross. But he said he's doing well with the career and India's doing great and everything. So it was cool catching up. But anyway, I think that he was kind of already done. Like he was already kind of checked out. Like he didn't want to do it anymore.
I think we did. I'm thinking the last show we played was at Crossroads in Garwood. Because remember, so around this time, I'm living with this girl,
Oh,
and this is 2007. She leaves, and my mom is like, "Hey, we need to meet for lunch." And I'm like freelancing at this point, so I meet my mom at TGI Fridays in Parsippany, and she's like talking shit on my girl. I was like, "Why do you always have to be like talk shit on her?" She's like, "Mike, she's cheating on you." So it turned out this girl I was living with was like she had cheated on me with some guy or a couple guys in the same. She was working in the same company as my mom, and then she hooked up with these two guys. I didn't know about it. She leaves to move back to California, and I was gonna like move out there in a couple months. So my mom finds out from her boss and tells me, and then I just go in a fucking like I was seeing fucking red at that time.
dude, that was such a bad time. I remember that so clearly.
It's
Oh,
so fucking bad. Did I ever tell you that I saw her when I was traveling in California and we just what's the word made amends?
did you? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it was like when I got divorced. Another great story. Like when I sold everything and traveled, it was like all this crazy shit was going on, and I was in LA, and she had texted me prior to me moving because she saw that my dad had died, and because her dad had passed away when we were like dating in early 2000s before she moved out to Jersey. And she was like, "Hey, I'm sorry about your dad." And I was like, "Who is this?" She goes, "Oh, you don't know." And then I was like, and I saw that it was like 818 or something. I was like, "Is this Courtney?" And she's like, "Yeah." So when I was in LA, she was like, "Let's meet," because she was like married and had a kid, and it was just like we kind of met up. And then so one day she goes, "Do you want to talk about it? The elephant in the room?" And I was like, "Sure." So we go to Santa Monica and we sit because Santa Monica is like it has this grass kind of greenway thing on a cliff, and then it looks over the ocean. So we like it's like a park kind of. So we sit there, and she's like, "So what do you want to know?" I was like, "Tell me everything." And she's telling me, and I'm just laughing. And she's like, "Why are you laughing?" I was like, "I'm so far removed from this that I just don't care."
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild, and I was like, "I don't think this is for me." I'm like, "I think this is for you, that you needed this." And it was like this really amazing like thing, and she told me, all the stuff that she did, and which really wasn't that much, but kind of rewind. It's 2007, so she leaves. I find this out, and then I'm living in Hoboken at the time, and I just like literally just break down. Which was crazy because we just had a shit relationship, so I don't know why I was so upset about this.
It's still jarring.
I mean, yeah, it was like, it was just, I don't know, it's like just being lied to for so long. So I write this EP, I write these acoustic songs, and I record them. And I remember one of the, I mean, they're just all about the breakup, and it's like really raw. And I think I've like maybe a couple of my best songs I feel like I've ever written are on that. And I remember I think I was like, hey, what do you think of the songs? And you're like, yeah, they're good. And you're like, Dan Ryan, he's like, he thinks they're a little much. It's like, well, yeah, that's the point. And he was so uncomfortable with those songs.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. The one where you're like, "Fucking whore,"
Yeah, you
like
fucking whore. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know about that so much. Maybe there's a better way to put that. Like,
yeah, listen to it now. Like, it doesn't really. It doesn't really.
Oh no, in 2024, that doesn't work. But
no.
I mean, even at the time, I was like, I don't know about that. That's a little bit more on like the Limp Bizkit side of the house. Be treading in those waters, but yeah.
I mean, it rhymed, so it worked for the lyrics.
It definitely rhymed. Yeah. No. But I remember when you brought them to practice. I remember you started playing them, and I was like, I don't know what to do here. Like, I don't know where I've kind of fit into this song. This just fit kind of. It kind of felt like one of those moments, like, you know, at an Oasis concert where like Noel just comes out by himself and just does like "Don't Look Back in Anger," and you're like, I was like, yeah, you can just kind of do these by yourself, I think.
Well, we did. The reason why I'm bringing up Garwood is that we did play. We turned one of them into like a full band song, or like two of them.
Doug Hopkins was Doug Hopkins' song.
Doug Hopkins, and I think another one. I forget which one it was.
Doug Hopkins, I loved because like
he wrote some.
Yeah. I like that one, and I like the reference because I was like, oh, I thought he was such a great songwriter, and like he wrote some Jim Blossom's greatest song. So I was like "Hold Me Down." That's a Doug Hopkins original, and that's like my favorite song by them. So I was like, oh, good reference. So I was really on board with a couple of those songs, but there was a couple that I was like, oh,
yeah,
it was this feels awfully personal. I don't know if I want to like jump on this one. I'm like, I'm kind of like, I don't really feel like I have a right to be playing this song.
Yeah, but I think that was, I think we played with Steve. And I think at the same time, too, Steve was bringing some songs to the table, and I was like, I don't want to be playing anyone else's song. So then I think Garwood was it. And then that was it. I think you had mentioned a couple of times, like, hey, let's play some shows or something. I was like, nah, man, I'm good. I just don't want to, I'm out. Then I was like doing my whole career and shit, and I was like, I'm just into this. I don't want to do this crap anymore. And I think that's just kind of how it stopped.
I think there was too, and I know we played a show in New Brunswick too at the Court Tavern. That was like during my like company sales conference, which was like huge.
Yeah, that's right.
Because and I remember it was such a funny thing because I remember like the bands we were playing with, they're like, oh, who wants to go first? And I'm like, we'll open. And I knew full well I wasn't looking for the prestige of headlining. I was like, I want the most people there, which will be the opening band because it's all, some people a little bit older. We got a sales conference to go to. People got to get up early. So it's like, we'll have the most people. And then everybody else kind of realized it. And the other bands realized it. We're like, oh, fuck, we want to open. I was like, not too late. We got that slot. And the place was packed. It was like, I think that was like the biggest show we ever played. And then like, we left.
Yeah. And we like that fucking asshole was working the door.
Yeah. That guy's a legendary asshole. That guy always was. Yeah. He's a dick.
I think he passed away actually a couple years ago.
Oh, rest in peace.
Yeah, but he was such a piece of shit, though.
Sucks. But yes, that was like around 2000. I think that was like 2007 or 2008, and like I know that Garwood show was definitely 2008. I think so. That was probably the end of it right there. Like 2008 was like the last hurrah, I believe. But yeah, it was some good shows that we played, but they just kind of like were so far in between, and it was like everything was so unsettled and unpredictable. Like Dan was gone, now we have Dave Patino, but he's got a million things. He's got his own photography studio. Steve kind of had his own thing doing, and I was open to Steve writing his own songs, but I knew you weren't, so I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of it then, because I knew we weren't going to be able to kind of like restrain him for too long, like he's a creative guy, he's gonna have to write stuff at some point, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I could work, and then you were like, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think it was just like one of those things where I felt that I'm like, you know what, I think it's time that I stop fucking writing shit. I was like, it just, the only time I ever write songs since then, it was the whole EP about Courtney, and then the 2 songs I wrote years later about my ex-wife when I got divorced. I'm like, I'm just writing these super sad fucking songs. The only time I'm motivated is when I'm just mad. So I was like, I don't think I need to do this anymore. Did you ever play any bands afterwards? We'll start wrapping this up soon, but
No, that was it, man. Like once September Sky was fun. Like obviously Date the Fair was life changing, but like September Sky was fun. It was just distance was tough. And then once I got the opportunity to be with you, it was like it just made so much more sense because like it's so rare, dude. And this is the thing, like to get to the answer to that question was like I played with two bands that like I loved the songwriters as a fan, purely as a fan. Chris wrote Lanemeyer songs I loved, his Date the Fair songs I loved. Take Two is still my favorite Lanemeyer song. To be on stage and be able to, and we started playing like Lanemeyer songs in our set with Booten. It was a All Roads Lead Back to Booten.
Every Road Leads to Booten. I think we played Energy as well.
We played Energy. We played Fuck You and Your Boyfriend. I got to play with half of Lanemeyer, the good half. No, I'm kidding. The songwriters that wrote all the songs that were so memorable and meant so much to me. I got to look over on stage while you're singing Energy, and I was like, holy fuck! It's so insane that I'm like here. Like, I just don't. It just. I never. I think there was times where I was frustrated or whatever, or like bitter at the time, and it's like I look back on it now, and I'm like, man, like what a privilege, what a like unbelievably like I was so unworthy of that. Like there's so many people that were so much more talented that like
I hate when you say that. Like you say that, I was just it's so self-deprecating.
But you know what? I'm not trying. I'm not fishing. I'm just saying like
Well, no, you're not fishing.
I look back on it.
But you're so like self-deprecating about that shit. Like you were, a great part of it.
Well, listen, I think I bring to the table like the personality and like the fun, like whatever. Like I get along with people, but like I think on a purely talent perspective, it's like obviously again like I could have taken it more seriously. I could have learned better. I could have like really studied and learned how to play the bass properly and whatever. But even again, being a roadie on the tour with Date the Fair was like that to me was like the pinnacle. It doesn't get better than this. And to be asked to be in the band was like, oh my fucking god. And then after that fails and like a ball of fire, it's like to now get to be in the other guy from Lanemeyer that sang and wrote amazing songs. Like now I'm in his band, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, how did I fall ass backwards into this? And it was just like, so like I think especially now with the benefit of hindsight and like that much years behind it, it's like it's pure gratitude, it's pure this fondness, and it's like, wow, I was so lucky, and I'm so grateful that I got that opportunity. Like it's unbelievable. So many people would kill to be where like I still have the bass like your Fender bass that I played that I bought from you,
Yeah,
that you guys all signed at that show. It's like hanging on my wall, and I'm like I'm it's just unbelievable.
I do want to preface though, I was selling things to move, and that's why I sold the bass. So,
Yeah. But I'm happy it found a good home. Like I'm glad you didn't put it on eBay and some guy's just using it and like gave it to his kid or something. Like it's got a proper place, and it's being displayed with reverence. So like to me that's important.
Well, I mean, I think kind of to the point too of what I said before about you just randomly emailed Chris and then it takes you down. Really, I mean, if you think about it, like I said, that sometimes it takes someone down a couple decades path. Sometimes that could be with the band and then it ends. But I feel like with you, it's like that turned into you doing that led to us meeting and becoming really good friends. And then being in the band, which was like so much fun. And then you fucking officiating my wedding. Obviously, that didn't work out, but like, it's like little things like that.
I felt like I could have done a better job on that one too, man. Maybe things would have turned out differently,
Yeah, I think
if I'd been more inspiring.
Yeah, maybe if you told me not to help her open a gym, that might have
and Jesus said unto his disciples, do not CrossFit, my friends. Do not CrossFit.
Do not get involved with hippies. All right, man. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Stay on after so we can just like keep talking and catch up. Last two questions before I ask the last one. What do you want to plug? It could be about you. It could be about a friend or a cause. It could be about all of them.
I don't really have anything to plug, man. I'm kind of trying to keep it low key and just have my wife, my beautiful daughter. And that's kind of my life now. I have my animals. I'm a fucking gentleman farmer now in my old age. I have goats and a mini horse and dogs. And it's like, I can't believe that's my life now, which is, again, total accident, but very grateful for it. So yeah, man, like I'm kind of out of that whole scene. I'm out of the hustle game of like this kind of world. So I got nothing to plug, but get out and vote. Vote for Kamala.
You always know like something going on. Like what's Pick up to? What's he doing these days?
Oh, Pick, he's he was working as a VP of cloud architecture. He's currently on the hunt for a new gig. So he's like kind of out there, putting himself out there. But he's doing great. He's the same wonderful guy he's always been. He's my BFF.
Yeah, I got to point out that, like just said before, how Sean is like one of the funniest people I've ever met. He just comes up with these really creative ideas just super quick. Like when Matt was having his bachelor party, he literally bought him like a ball and chain, and he was like shackled it to him for the entire night. He was like, "You can't take this off." and
Oh my God, I remember that.
that was so funny. And then like you did some Harry Potter fucking costume thing, and you dressed up like Snape, and you just like never broke character the entire time. Where like Beth wanted
Yeah,
to
my
like
wife hates
kill
that.
you.
She hates that so much. Like, so yeah, we were doing like themed birthday parties for my daughter like every year for her birthday, and like I go way too far with it. So like I'm in character as Snape, like giving people demerits and deducting points from their houses, and it's 10 o'clock at night, it's like everybody's fucking done with this shit, and I'm like 3 point demerit for Gryffindor. She's like, shut the fuck up.
I just love you. Just fucking just commit, and I just always love that.
I do commit to the bit. Like when we did a Halloween party like a few years before that, and I dressed as Quint from Jaws. I learned the entire Indianapolis speech, and I just kept telling people I was like, Japanese submarine slammed two torpedoes into her side, chief. And I went through the whole fucking thing. People were like, oh my God, shut up.
You're like just sitting in front of like a chalkboard, just scraping your nails to get everyone's
Yeah, that's
attention.
exactly what I did the whole night. It was like
Last question: what scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
none, because I wasn't part of that fucking scene. So go fuck yourselves. No, I'm kidding. No, actually, like the reality is, like I learned so much, just kind of how to deal with people, how to kind of navigate certain things like personalities and stuff like that. That really was like they say like when you go to college, like most of the education you get from college is like outside the classroom, I guess, unless you're like a fucking doctor or something. But like it really is just learning how to kind of deal with people. And I learned a lot of that in college too. But like I think a lot of it personalities are so different, and like I've never really come from a place of like artistic people, like people like songwriters and people that are more sensitive. And so it was like learning how to navigate that and kind of talk and kind of incorporate myself into that was has really benefited me like in jobs. I get along with people pretty well, and like it's I can manage different personalities pretty well because I kind of know how to deal with it. So I don't know if that's seen ethics or if it's just kind of seen learning experiences, but that's been invaluable in my life.